waves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 800-SAY-ESPN. I'm sorry, 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, 250 plus marks across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listings nearest you. Plus the ESPN Radio, Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, Sirius XM Channel 80. Plus the Stephen A. Smith Show over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by mycomputercareer.edu. Training for a better life. Now, you might be wondering why I'm on the national airwaves with this cowboy hat on. Well, it just so happens that I was watching them Cowboys last night, watching them against those New Orleans Saints, watching those Cowboy fans all over the world bloviating about how those Cowboys going to remain undefeated. I guess that done fell apart, didn't it? I guess it done fell apart. Suddenly, the Dallas Cowboys couldn't run with the football, couldn't throw the football, couldn't score with the football, couldn't do anything offensively. Now, that defense is something special. That defense is something special. But that offense, no can do. Ezekiel Elliott, 18 carries for 35 yards, less than 2 yards per carry. Dak Prescott, 22 of 33, just 223 yards. Interception, sacked one time. Couldn't get much going. And they lost to Teddy Bridgewater and the New Orleans Saints. Just imagine if my man Drew Brees was out there. And as a result, the Dallas Cowboys lost the game, and that's why I was wearing this hat. Want to do that little dedication to all those Cowboy fans out there with my regular cowboy accent all over the place. Okay? I'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. My man JC and Jonathan Winthrop laughing at me, laughing at my southern drawl and all of that other stuff. I love them Cowboy fans everywhere. Even Cowboy fans in the East, in the West, in the South. I mean, it don't have to be just the South. They all sound the same. Sticking out their chest, acting like they're going to win the Super Bowl. Everything is well. Well, guess what? It ain't well at all. It ain't well at all. I'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. Tickle your fancy there just a touch. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. But I'll get to your Cowboy fans later. Don't you worry about it. Don't you worry about it. I reckon I'll get right back to you in short order. Don't you worry. You stick right there. You don't touch that channel. You don't touch that channel. Okay? Just want to make sure. I got bigger things to get to right now. I got bigger things to get to. And to be quite honest with you, there's nothing funny about what I'm about to talk about because it doesn't involve the Dallas Cowboys. Give them credit for this much. They're playing some damn good football for the most part. And the storyline involving them has been stuff like football or contract negotiations involving football. It hasn't been the kind of nonsense that Vontaze Burfict has subjected so many people to. Vontaze Burfict, it was announced a little over an hour ago, has been suspended by the National Football League for the remainder of this 2019 football season. The final 12 games, and even if the Oakland Raiders make the playoffs, he will be suspended there as well. If you see the highlights right there. Indianapolis Colts tight end Jack Doyle catches a pass. Vontaze Burfict launches into him head first, crown of the helmet, doing everything that the NFL has implored its players not to do, spanning several years now. Very, very clear that that's not something you need to do. And Vontaze Burfict did it anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no defense for it anymore. I don't have any axe to grind against Vontaze Burfict. I've only met him one time, only spoke to him one time. I had the pleasure of meeting with him. Sound like a really, really smart brother. But guess what? The history doesn't speak intelligence. He's 28 years of age. He's racked up over $4.5 million in career fines and forfeited pay. All right? This fine that he has now incurred is the largest on-field fine in NFL history. There is no way around this. There is no way to justify what we're talking about here. Over the course of his NFL career, he's been penalized 13 different times. From Corona Centennial High School from 2005 to 2009, when he initially was going to go to USC with Matt Barkley, before Matt Barkley came out, called him a dirty player because he was targeting Matt Barkley's knee as a high school player, according to Matt Barkley, who ultimately committed to USC, and Vontaze Burfict went to Arizona State. To him going to Arizona State, shoving a referee, incurring numerous fines, even though he was a freshman defensive player of the year in the Pac-10, it was a problem. Arizona State coach at the time, Dennis Erickson, said, quote, he got carried away. That's how he is, but he's got to control it. I love his intensity. I don't want to slow his intensity down because it's contagious for the rest of the players, for the fans, for everybody involved in the program. But he's got to be smart. And evidently, that wasn't good enough. Then he goes to the National Football League with the Cincinnati Bengals. And what are we talking about here? As a rookie, he starts 14 games, led the team in tackles with 127. The Bengals finished number 6 in total defense, but allowed 2.4 more yards per play when Burfict was off the field. Earned a $20 million extension in 2014, but he reverted to his former self, racking up personal fouls and fines that have since come to define his play. And then we know the rest. 13 fines in 7 years. Suspensions over that period of time. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. It's indefensible. I would love to sit here and come to the defense of Vontaze Burfict. I truly would. But literally going after the head of players. What possible sense is that? It doesn't make any sense. You don't know better than that? And then to get suspended yet again after literally launching himself, led by the crown of his helmet, into the head of Jack Doyle, gets ejected from the game, and then departs from the game in Indianapolis, waving, smiling ear to ear, waving at the fans and blowing kisses, knowing a suspension is imminent. Ladies and gentlemen, my personal belief is that his career is over. I'm not saying I wish that for him or anybody else. His career is over. I can't see it any other way. And here's why. The Cincinnati Bengals could not trade him last year. They couldn't give him away for a box of cookies. They ultimately elected to release him in March. When they elected to do that, he was a free agent for one day, and the Oakland Raiders picked him up, led by John Gruden. They pick him up. They brought him on the team. Ladies and gentlemen, he was actually the voice of reason when Antonio Brown got in to Mike Mayock, the GM for the Oakland Raiders. When Antonio Brown got into his face, it was Vontaze Burfict separating him. It was Vontaze Burfict trying to calm him down. But he gets out on the field and he does this. Suspended for the rest of the season. I'd love to sit here and tell you that it's too extreme. But how many warnings do you need? How many warnings is he supposed to receive before he learns the error of his ways? The National Football League, in concert with the Players Association, negotiated all types of rules that would position you to elevate the level of safety that exists in the NFL. That's what they did. That's what they did. They sat up there and they said, you know what? This is what we're trying to do here. This is what we want you to do. We want to avoid those headshots. We don't want to be sued over concussions and CTE costing us billions of dollars potentially. We don't want that. We're going to eradicate that from our game. The Players Association agreed. Practice times involving contact drills, they were limited. Guys spending hours in a weight room and with strength and conditioning coaches now is the way to go as opposed to actual contact or being subjected to contact. Those were all things the players signed off on. And Vontaze Burfict has repeatedly, religiously violated that mandate. I'm not here to get on him. I wish the brother was in the league. I wish he didn't get suspended. I wish he was making his money. The guy that I met and talked to seemed like a relatively nice guy. Now, clearly he's not that on the field, and he doesn't need to be that on the field because when you on the field to play, hell, you're trying to get things done. I understand it. I really, really do. But I got to tell you something, man. This is too extreme. It's too much. It can't be tolerated. If the league did not suspend him for the rest of this year, what recourse would they have to do anything to similar offenders, similar violators? They'd have no leverage, no cachet whatsoever. They absolutely, positively had to take this position. You can slice it any way you want to. Absolutely, positively had to take this position. There is no doubt about it. And because that's the situation that we're in, because that's the situation we find ourselves in, this is what it is. Vontaze Burfict had to be suspended for the rest of the year. I didn't advocate that before it happened, but I damn sure ain't going to argue with it now that it has. It's a damn shame. And people want to point to, well, you know, there must be some kind of issue since he has the inability to control himself. My man Max Kellerman and others will explain it. Well, you know what? The world is filled with a bunch of Oprah-fied people. That's what I like to call them. It's an explanation for everything. And I'm not saying that to denigrate the queen herself, Oprah Winfrey, in any way. I'm just saying that when we talk about a JC, when we talk about Jonathan, people that were introduced, psychologists of the world and others that were just introduced to us over this new generation of millennials. We see, I mean, who would Dr. Phil be if it were not for Oprah? Just think about that for a second. You know, I'm more of a Judge Judy kind of person myself. I'm more of a judge, and no nonsense. I want to hear it. And it's not that I literally don't want to hear it. It's that at some point in time, violators of rules and regulations shouldn't always have a damn explanation for every single thing, every single transgression they partake of. Sometimes, damn it, it's about you. Sometimes it's about what you've done. Sometimes it's about consequences. Because it involves the safety of others. It ain't like you harming yourself. If you really, really think about it, this is what it really comes down to. Vontaze Burfict is most guilty in his NFL career of knocking defenseless people upside the head. Is that accurate, John? I think it is. That's really what it comes down to. It's not like you're in a boxing ring like Errol Spence Jr. against Sean Porter Saturday night, which was a damn good fight, by the way, and you swinging at each other. That's not what happened. Vontaze Burfict is knocking defenseless people upside the head. You catching a pass, you don't see him coming. You concentrating on the ball, and he's targeting your head. This ain't somebody in the octagon or the boxing ring. There's a football field with dudes looking at the ball. Might not have any idea that you're coming. And you're taking your 250-pound body and throwing the full force of your weight into their head. How can we defend that? I would ask my producers here in charge of this television show for the Stephen A. Smith Show, radio show on ESPN News, could you please stop showing that video of Antonio Brown getting knocked upside the head? That's kind of vicious to watch. Vontaze Burfict tried to decapitate him. Enough's enough. Cannot be tolerated. Plain and simple. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. A couple of other things I want to get into. New York Giants won a game last night, 24-3. Yesterday afternoon, 24-3. In that game that they won, they call him Danny Dimes. Let me say this to you about Daniel Jones, the new quarterback for the New York Giants. I totally understand the notion that he's a breath of fresh air. Because watching him run with the football, think about it. Is there a franchise in NFL history, John? Is there a franchise in NFL history that has gone a decade plus without seeing a quarterback able to run? Think about that. The Giants are the only franchise in the history of the National Football League that went more than a decade without seeing a quarterback that could scramble 5 yards. You know why? Because Eli Manning's been their quarterback and he hasn't missed any damn games. So they've never seen a quarterback with an ability to run with the football as well. They've never seen that. They've never seen it. And so since we know they've never seen it, imagine watching Danny Dimes run with the football. He had 5 carries for 33 yards. He scrambled out of the pocket for 33 yards. When's the last time Eli Manning did that? That's what we're talking about here with Daniel Jones. And so if we see it for what it is, understand that he's a breath of fresh air for the New York Giants. Now, I saw 2 interceptions by Quentin Dunbar yesterday. That wasn't impressive. That's why I give Daniel Jones a C. I like his promise. I like his upside. I like his potential. I give you all of that. But I would give him a C. I'm not sold on Daniel Jones yet. I'm not sold. I'll be the first to tell you, I am not sold. Not by a damn sight. But I will tell you this. He is impressive. And I don't blame New York Giants fans for being excited because you haven't had a reason to be excited. Now, here's the flip side to it. The Redskins were who you were playing against. The Redskins are so awful, it is now fair to start comparing Daniel Snyder to James Dolan. Just the level of ineptitude attached to your franchise is all I'm talking about. I don't get personal about James Dolan the way others do. I just know that since his stewardship, the New York Knicks are perennial losers. That's all I know. They're allergic to prosperity with James Dolan around. Period. And he had a lot to do with Kevin Durant electing not to come to New York. Period. Figure out how I know. In the case of the Washington Redskins, they are just an abysmal franchise. They are god-awful. Read Sally Jenkins' column in the Washington Post. It talked about the Giants being a relatively respectable franchise with a plan moving in the right direction, and they were going against the Redskins. It was awful. And so Case Keenum can't do anything right yesterday. He only completes 6 passes for 37 yards. Can't see straight. Had the foot injury that hampered them to some degree. And Jay Gruden decides to go with Dwayne Haskins. Let me say this in defense of Haskins. As indefensible as his play looked, a rating of 32, 9 of 17 for 107 yards with sacked twice, 3 interceptions. He looked awful. Got it. Let me tell you how I can come to his defense. 1, he runs better than most of us thought. 2, how in the hell do you put this guy in a game? How in the hell do you put this guy in a game? He has no practice reps with the first team. Do you have any idea how cruel it is what Jay Gruden did to Dwayne Haskins yesterday? I know that Case Keenum was completing 69% of his passes. I know that he had, up until Chicago game, he didn't have any interceptions with 5 touchdowns. I get all of that, but the fact of the matter is, you were 0-3. You knew people were clamoring for Dwayne Haskins. All you had to do was make sure you gave him some reps with the first team. That's all you had to do. Jay Gruden didn't do this. See, that's grounds for dismissal right there. It's a fireable offense. I don't think Jay Gruden should be the head coach of the Redskins right now. I think he should actually be fired today. I want him to keep his money, though, because I don't want to compromise his ability to take care of his family, even though he does have a brother making $100 million with an additional $18 million in incentives in Oakland, who, by the way, is questionable whether he deserved that. But that's neither here nor there. If I got that money, I ain't turning it down, so I'm not going to knock John Gruden for that, but that's a different story for another day. By the way, good win by the Oakland Raiders yesterday in Indy, despite Vontaze Burfict's nonsense. But getting back to Jay Gruden in the nation's capital, he should not be a head coach for the Washington Redskins any longer, period. Period. There was a negligence of duty yesterday with him putting Dwayne Haskins in that lineup with the first team. He wasn't ready. But Jay Gruden didn't do enough to get him ready. And a legitimate argument can be made that coaching on a part of the Redskins is what's holding Dwayne Haskins back from looking like Daniel Jones. One could argue. We don't know. But we know about the Redskins, don't we? That shouldn't be hard to figure out. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call up. This 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Lots of stuff to get into today. Nick Chubb and the Cleveland Browns ran roughshod over the Baltimore Ravens. What the hell is going on with the Baltimore Ravens right now? Hey, Baker Mayfield shut everybody up yesterday. We got to talk about that, too. Of course, the Rams giving up 55 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Jameis Winston. What the hell is that about? Does Carolina need Cam Newton? They've won 2 straight without him. That's an interesting stuff. Oh, by the way, sticking with the NFC South, what the hell happened to the Atlanta Falcons? What's going on with them? That's something interesting to talk about. And, of course, Dallas, New Orleans. That's something interesting to get into.